Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. Today we're joined by 620 CKRM Regina AgriNews Director Ryan Young and Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hursh. I'm Doug Falconer from GX94 Yorkton, Agriculture Director here. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi, Doug.
Good afternoon.
One of the meetings going on this week was in Ottawa. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture was meeting there. I understand Federal Agriculture Minister Lawrence MacAulay put in an appearance there, and they did talk about the Bill C-234 a bit. And Ryan, you followed up a bit on that?
Yeah, a little bit. I was just doing some reading earlier this week, and I came across an article that made mention of Minister MacAulay being at the meeting, and it was during a Q&A session that a delegate asked about whether he supports Bill 234 in its original form or amended form. Obviously, MacAulay, I mean, what do you do when you're an ag minister? You know, you're probably going to toe the party lines, so he answered that, you know, he supports, farmers, getting whatever support that they can and being there for farmers and all that. So there was that and a whole bunch of other things. I'm actually in the process of lining up an interview with Ian Boxall, the president of APAS, who was at the meeting, according to one of his colleagues there. So I'm sure I'll get to hear about that and a whole lot more from the meeting.
And I understand they also discussed the advance payment program, and some people were wanting it to be increased back up to $350,000 from the $100,000. And I guess Minister MacAulay just said, well, ask the finance minister.
Yeah, I think everybody will be watching the federal budget when it comes out to see if this is something that they renew or whether indeed the advance payments program drops from the $350,000 of previous years down to its traditional $100,000 for the interest-free portion. But I think farm groups are lobbying, saying if it was warranted to have $350,000 last year, why is that not warranted for this year? What has changed so dramatically that be dropped back?
All right, and of course the Prairie Grain Development Commission held meetings in Saskatoon during the past week as well. And Kevin, you're kind of familiar with what their mandate is.
Yeah, the PGDC, they break into smaller groups, with the cereals such as wheat, oil seeds, mainly flax and mustard, oats. But most varieties that are registered have to be at least as good and better in some way than existing varieties. So these meetings argue about, is the yield high enough? Is the quality consistent enough according to what we have for the Czech variety? Before we recommend these varieties for registration by the CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And these PGDC meetings draw the researchers and all of the plant breeders from across Western Canada, and they alternate. 1 year typically in Banff, Alberta, 1 year in Saskatoon, and 1 year in Winnipeg. And this was Saskatoon's turn this time around.
All right, and of course, one of the other things we talked about this week was the markets, and canola closed down on Friday, but I guess it closed up a little bit for the week. You had a chance to speak with Adam Pacalo, Ryan.
That's right. Yeah, that was kind of a rare thing to say for Adam in what seems like quite a long time, where the canola price for the March contract for quite a while there was going down and just showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. So, kind of hearing from Adam that the canola price for the week earlier this morning was up $17 a ton for the week was a very good thing to hear. But from what I understand, I think it closed down a little bit lower than what it was this morning. So we'll see what happens with the new contract for May coming up here in subsequent days and weeks. It was kind of the same thing with the Minneapolis wheat contract for May. It was relatively unchanged, but kind of down for a little bit. I think Adam said earlier this morning it was trading a bit down. So kind of similar story for both commodities.
What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Yeah, as Ryan says, it's been a long time since we haven't seen a net loss in canola for the week. Sometimes we'd see a blip upwards for a day or two, but it was followed by losses that didn't counteract that. So it's gone on a long, terrible slide. Maybe now we're going to see it stabilize. Really interesting to see how many shorts in the market, in the futures market, and people scratch their heads over how there can be so many people, so many traders short on the market and not have the market at some point react. But that's beyond my pay grade trying to understand that, I'm afraid.
All right, and the Western Canadian Wheat Growers Association held their AGM online, I guess, virtually over this week. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Dave Quist about that.
That's right. Yeah. And it was kind of a plan B, so to speak. Originally, the plan was to have this AGM in a convention setting here in Regina last month, but that was canceled due to just the timing of the event. Not working for most members, likely either on vacation or doing other things or having other commitments. So the plan changed then to a virtual AGM with members only. And there was a few things that were talked about at the AGM, one of which was he mentioned the finances for the wheat growers were in the black. I asked him about how much. He said, nah, it was kind of more for the executive only. So not a surprise there. But one of the highlights from last year, too, was, just incorporating younger farmers into the fold. They launched the Young Farmers Mentorship Program in August of last year. There was a couple of young farmers that were selected to be the first mentees. So that was a step in the right direction. He hopes, Dave Quist hopes that the two will eventually become, directors on the board and continue to work with the wheat growers. So that was one notable positive. And some things for this year planned, most notably, they want to keep an eye on the Canadian Grain Act review that's been talked about from time to time. And one of the things that they would like to see addressed is the inspection of outbound grain. Currently, it's done by two different parties. One is by a third party or a private inspector that maybe farmers hire to check their grain, as well as at the ports, the grain gets inspected as well. So a little bit of redundancy there that I guess that they want to get addressed. And just kind of going from there and some of the highlights from the AGM.
That outbound inspection is quite an issue, and the ag community is divided on it. It's everything that's exported has to be inspected and graded by the Canadian Grain Commission, but many of the customers around the world don't want a Canadian Grain Commission certificate. They want to see a grade from SGS or Interlock or one of the other third-party graders. So Canadian Grain Commission is charging more than the private ones, and doing the inspection and charging for it even when it isn't desired by the buyer. Now, some people say it's still necessary to have a Canadian Grain Commission inspection of everything, and others say it's a waste of time, but it's really how the Canadian Grain Commission is now funding itself. So if it wasn't getting a whole bunch of money for outbound inspection, it would have to find a different funding model.
Interesting.
And I kind of heard that this review is, the long time coming. I guess the last time was decades ago, I think somewhere in the 80s or something like that. You might remember the last time, Kevin, that the Grain Act was reviewed.
It's been talked about, and they've taken submissions many times, but they've never really reopened the act. They've seemed ready to do something, and then an election would come or another issue would come, and it's always just been pushed to the back burner. But part of the problem is there's not necessarily agreement on a lot of the things that people think should be done to the Canadian Grain Commission.
All right, and finally, of course, an announcement coming up in Melville next Tuesday from the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation, looking at the 2024 numbers. But Kevin, you were able to give us a sneak peek this week.
Yeah, it's really rare. Usually the program is announced, and just after that, you find out what the insured prices are and the nuts and bolts that farmers are interested in. This time, I didn't understand it. I was seeing some people starting to quote numbers on Twitter. Where are you getting this? It hasn't been announced yet. Well, it turns out that if you go to the crop insurance website and if you're set up under Crop Connect there to make your own changes to crop insurance coverage, the numbers were posted there. And just today in the mail, I got all my crop insurance what ifs ahead of the announcement, which has never happened before. So a little different. Producers have the numbers that they really need to digest. Makes you wonder just exactly what they're going to say at the news conference on Tuesday. But we'll be listening, and we'll have a report and let you know what's going on.
Yeah, so what did you think of that, Ryan? I kind of thought it's kind of unusual. I'm kind of wondering if crop insurance was aware that this could happen, that media people could get a hold of these numbers ahead of time.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by it actually, and I was kind of taken aback when we caught wind of it at first earlier in the week. Like, really? Like, this is happening? Like, what's going on? So, kind of seeing all the information available ahead of time was, I guess you could say a refreshing thing. I guess if you want to take an early look of what insured prices are, you're more than welcome to. Maybe a change of course in how the crop insurance does business and how the Ministry of Ag releases the information. It would be a worthwhile question to ask to Minister Merritt as to why, this change all of a sudden, because like Kevin said, traditionally it's announced right around, this time, and you don't see the prices until after it's announced.
It may have just been the case that for whatever reason that maybe the actual announcement had to be delayed. And there are some changes to the program, some minor changes to rainfall, intercrop coverage, and things like that I suspect they will talk about. So they may have some things to talk about. This is about the normal time for farmers to get this information. The announcement itself is actually later than normal. So for whatever reason, the numbers are out. Producers are going to, in my preliminary look at my numbers, is that a lot of the premiums are up and a lot of the coverages are down going into the next growing season.
All right. Well, on that note, I think that'll conclude another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of Chief Agricultural Editor Kevin Hursh and 620 CKRM Regina AgriNews Director Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next week.